I'm Lisa from Been There, Got Out, and tonight's guest is a friend of mine named Raquel Reis. She's a relationship coach based in New York City, and she is just there. She is. Okay, Raquel, I see you. Yay! Now let's see if we can get you on here. Phone ring. Let's try it. Oh, try it again. Oh my gosh, why is it so difficult?
I don't know.
Oh, there you are. Oh, good, good, good. Okay, that worked. All right, so Raquel, I was just starting to introduce you. So I was saying you're a relationship coach, and we're never going to push our clients to get their relationship back together again. But you've got this unique set of skills because that our clients can use, especially in terms of highly developed social and emotional skills. And I was saying that lately we've been doing a lot with negotiation, and we always, work on mediation, but I feel like understanding that just because the other side is very, very difficult, which all of our people in our communities, exes tend to be, it doesn't mean that you should just say, oh, it's not worth it to negotiate, it's not worth it to mediate, because then you're basically opening up the floodgates of burning through money in the family court system and having your power taken away when you have an opportunity to try to influence that other person and come to some kind of resolution, possibly yourselves, or at least make a little bit of progress.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for agreeing to come on and sharing your skills with us. I don't know if you ever heard of the term tactical empathy. Have you heard of that? I just heard of it recently.
It's I don't know the exact definition, so let
Yeah.
me tell me. Yes.
But so the definition.
But I'd like to know. Yes.
Yeah, you can imagine, and I think what you're going to be talking about is that, but it's really recognizing the power that you have in deeply realizing someone else's perspective in order to disarm them so that you can move them towards some kind of conflict resolution, whether it happens to be in court or out. And I've been learning lately that negotiation isn't just part of court stuff, it's part of our daily lives. So I think social emotional skills are really, really important overall. But before we even get into that, why don't you first formally introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're so good at your job.
Thank you. So I'm Raquel Reis. I'm a relationship coach, and I help couples and individuals turn their struggles into better connection, into a great, I wouldn't even say better connection, better teamwork, better communication, knowing how to navigate differences without having it to be a fight or conflict. The differences is actually an opportunity to become better partners. So just as Lisa said, I had some opportunities to send clients your way. It never have happened the other way.
Sorry.
But that's what I love to do. I actually have to say that I feel like the more I do this work, the more I realize how much one person can change a dynamic, and everything that you just said about tactical empathy, we can change the trajectory of a communication by how we show up, by how we conduct ourselves, by how we communicate, and also by how we see the other person. It actually affects them. How we see them affects them. So, yeah.
Okay. And anything about your background? Like, I know you never want to answer because you hate being the center of attention, but what makes you really good at your job?
Besides getting an enormous amount of training with some of my relationship heroes and just a lot of modalities and a lot of different perspective on how our brain work and how under many circumstances, I think what makes me great also is I have probably done many mistakes, which is what led me to learn how to not fall into these pitfalls and how to do things differently. And the experiences that I am having today are so different than what I've had in the past before I had this information. And once I've learned it, I was just like, everybody needs to know it. We all need it. We always joke that we need a relationship coach in every corner. We're just like not equipped to.
Right? Where do we learn it?
No, and so much of the messages, the social messages, are actually so counterintuitive. We fuel the fight rather than dissolve it. We create a fight and flight and adversary framework where it's the last thing that we want. So this information is, I'm like, why do they call it soft skills? We need it. We really need it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I wish they taught it in school, starting at kindergarten at least.
Yeah. But I think this is what we do. We teach it in the home and one family at a time. And when you exactly like what you said, we use it in negotiation, but we use it in everyday negotiation. We have to somehow negotiate our differences. Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely when it's extreme, it requires black belt, self-management and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, conflict, like a lot of our clients say, oh, I'm conflict avoidant. I hate this kind of thing. It's like, I know that, like, most of us don't like conflict, but instead of being afraid of it and having other people take care of it for us, or just saying, I can't handle it, I'm just going to give in. There's a lot of power in learning how to navigate conflict and using those skills. And to me, conflict improves relationship and also gives us the opportunity, as I've experienced, to have all kinds of personal triumphs and better relationships rather than, oh, I don't like this, I'm just going to walk away.
Yeah.
Or I get.
You have become a better person in that process. It really is such a heart opening, and it's very empowering. It's very empowering to know that you got this, that you can handle this, that you don't have to run away from it. Sometimes actually running away from it escalates it.
Right?
There's actually diffuse it, that there's simple ways that you can create an experience. Create an experience everywhere you go. Like who am I showing up as? What am I bringing to the table here? Regardless of how the other person is showing up.
Yeah, and that's what's so important is people often feel in our community very helpless because they're like, my ex is a narcissist, my ex is abusive, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to be dealing with this until my kid is 18. Yeah. And I've started realizing that we can't control that other person, but what we can control is conflict reduction. How to effectively manage that other person. Because when there is all this conflict and we keep butting heads, that bleeds down onto our children.
Yeah. And how we effectively, even if you look at management skills, in the workplace, how we manage other people always starts with how we manage ourselves. So that is the good news, because you have control. You have more control than you think, and it's it's sometimes it's a little paradoxical. We will dive into it, but that is when I started saying that when I work with couples and when I work with individuals, sometimes I see that things change faster when someone comes to me by themselves, because they don't have the illusion that they're going to change someone else. Like, they take full responsibility. They know that the only thing that they can control is themselves, and just amazing things happen very fast. Where when a couple come to me, sometimes they're still like, even though it's all about personal responsibility, they're still like really, really hoping they can change someone else. And the most amazing thing is that when you start managing yourself differently, like, it's almost like you do a dance and the other person cannot dance by themselves. When you change the steps, the dance changes. Mm-hmm. So I hope it's hopeful. I hope it's hopeful for people that are listening, because it's the bad news and it's also the great news. You have much more power than you think you do.
Yep. And I think one of the things I also recently read was how important it is to be optimistic, to participate in the process. Because if you say it's never going to work, you're right. It's never going to work because you're not even going to try. But if you remain open-minded and think, maybe there's something I can do to influence this other person and try to solve this problem together, if we could come to some consensus on a couple of things, which, you know, is different, the stuff we work with and what you work with, there's a possibility that we might make some progress, and that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Or going backwards.
Yeah. And also to treat it like any other skill. If you have a lifetime of fights that feel like a losing battle, like be gentle with yourself. Like allow yourself to grow into it. You know, if you try something and it didn't work right away, like come back to it again, just like riding a bike.
Yeah, you know, you just reminded me of an awesome quote. One of our clients said, you know, we have this weekly legal abuse support group. And so one of our clients made a comment like a week or two ago. She said, you know, I'm not saying that anyone deserves to go through this kind of situation, but if I hadn't gone through this, I would have stayed a doormat my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, yeah, because she's learned in the process how not to be a doormat and how to advocate for herself through extreme situations over years.
Well, sending her lots of love, and all of your clients and audience that are going through really hard stuff. Yeah.
Thank
you. But really, like that is the good news. Like there is a huge healing opportunity in actually how you navigate exiting it. So, yeah.
All right, so let's get to it. Yeah. You know, we like to get into like practical, actionable advice. So I don't know what you want to start with, but in my mind, I was like, why don't we start with the power of empathy? Like how can empathy be a powerful thing in general?
You know, I love that. And I actually, something that you said kind of sparked my attention. And also it's actually the first thing that I wrote here, outlook. You know, so I feel like there's three folds to how to approach a negotiation. One is tactical, you know, just like very strategic things to do. There's actually research that shows that how you begin a conversation predicts the outcome of the conversation. So there's the tactical aspect of it, and there's also more somatic, because how we regulate ourselves really one of the things that we say in coach speak is who you are is more important than what you do. Mm-hmm. You can do all the right things, and if you come in just like angry, afraid, contentious, like wanting to win, wanting revenge, it doesn't matter if you do everything perfect. So like managing yourself, how you're approaching the conversation, all of it makes a difference. And what you said is like whatever you think you can or cannot do, you're right. So even like starting with an intention, and the intention can actually be an empathy intention. Like it can be, we can solve this. There is a solution that is going to work for all of us. When I work with a couple, I would suggest we are a team. So here we're not a team, but we got this. We can solve this. He's not the enemy, or she's not the enemy.
The problem is the enemy. The like solving it. We both have to solve this problem. It's not the person. It's the problem.
The problem is
that's the enemy.
Yeah, and let's unite against the problem.
Right.
We got it. Yeah.
Right. And there's ways to do that with high conflict people, but there's a lot of like other stuff that has to happen in the background. And I love what you said about the somatic part, like the part that shows up. One thing that I was recently reading, and we have props that we always like show on screen with our clients, and one is a barf bag from flying, and we're like, we know you're going to hate to do this, but if you can show up to a negotiation and smile and act like you're excited to be there because it's an opportunity to try to tackle a problem, that will make such a difference. And that will also surprise your adversary because they're not used to you being like, yay, I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Let's try to work this out. They'd never see that from you.
Yeah. So this is actually is the beginning of one, like a tactical thing to start a conversation is starting with an appreciation. And if you're talking about an empathy, so it's both actually tactical and it's also an outlook, because when you appreciate, it cannot be fake. You know, it really like, so when you start looking for things to appreciate, and it can just be like, I really appreciate that you showed up. I really appreciate that you showed up, and I trust that we can solve it. Like if you cannot, so I love the smile, but if you can have an authentic smile, like it's better to be authentic.
Right. Yeah. Well,
like,
nobody really wants to be there, but if you can really fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and just be like, I really appreciate that you're here. I trust that we can solve it. And then just look for things to appreciate, whatever it is.
Right.
It can be their intention, you know, even if they failed in every execution. Like, I really appreciate your intentions, or I really. So start appreciating, and appreciating what it does. First of all, it disarms the person in front of you. They're like, okay, it's not an enemy, and you know, there is a lot of somatic and survival um, response that runs the show, especially when we're in high contentious situations. So that is something to clarify even before we go. It's called negative bias override, and it's really that our brain registers danger more than it registers safety.
Really?
Yeah. So you can think about it. For a really simple example is if you met 10 friendly dogs and you love them, and then one dog bites you, you may start being afraid of dogs. The brain just like goes to like survival, 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 survival. So when you have a lot of breach of trust, very hot, like you are on the outlook for danger, and you might be missing, you know, a lot of small things that the other person is doing that are actually gestures of peace, gestures of mutuality. Like you just be like scanning for danger. So starting to reverse that dynamic is what you're doing. You know, it's what you're saying. You know, like start with a smile. Say we can do it. So just by starting with an appreciation, it's the brain, and it's all unconscious things that are in the show. The brain is like, okay, they're not out to get me. They see my good intention. And your brain is also like, okay, this is not a complete devil. Like this is a human. You know, like both your brains are coming down. So starting with an appreciation is from the Gottman Institute, which is one of the leading institutes in the study of successful marriages. They call it soft startup, and they predict that when you start soft, when you start with friendliness, it actually predicts the outcome of the conversation. And when you just go to the jugular right from the beginning, it's like all hell break loose. Everybody's in the defense. Everybody's there to like protect themselves. It just doesn't go well. So
yeah, something you said before is about trust.
yeah.
I noticed so you said showing up and saying, I trust that we can do this. I trust that we can solve this problem. You're not saying I trust you to the other person, and you don't have to trust the other person. That's ridiculous. But it's almost like saying I trust in myself and my ability to try to work on this. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, I see we're getting some notes here as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. So the first thing is just to come with the intention of it going well. With the intention of it going well, and with verbalizing it. You know. Yeah. So that would be the beginning. And then I would say that the other thing, and then the other thing is also like the somatic part is really paying attention to our physiology. So whatever we can do beforehand to calm ourselves down, to breathe. And then when we notice that during the conversation, like the biggest thing, we create a lot of havoc when we feel dangerous. danger, when we feel an uncomfortable feeling. So much of the messes that we create are actually an attempt to avoid feeling uncomfortable feelings. So the more you actually allow yourself to feel uncomfortable feeling and just breathing through them and not reacting from them would really, really help and support the conversation. And again, it sounds, it's like we want to get into a solution, but actually like noticing and knowing like, oh my God, like nothing's going to go well if I like speak from this and just
I love that. I love that about like acknowledging that this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So with mediation and with negotiation with our exes, of course it doesn't feel good. Of course it's scary. Of course you're not comfortable being in the same room or even in another room, maybe, if that's what's happening. But acknowledging like you don't have to feel comfortable. You're not even supposed to feel comfortable. But then it becomes a personal challenge of, can I get through this? And imagine just being able to get through it and possibly make some progress. Shows that you got somewhere.
Yeah. And also just like having compassion to yourself, to the other person. And one of the things that I see is like when you are willing to feel uncomfortable. I mean, it's in everything that we do in life. When you're willing to feel uncomfortable feelings, you can do anything because you're not trying to run away from it, avoid it, or just like bulldoze through it. So you actually get to make it's the difference between, I call it human animal and human spirit, or making a choice versus.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how it helps develop resilience. So it's almost like when somebody doesn't fail, they don't have the opportunity to develop resilience because they never feel uncomfortable. But it's those people who go through, like all of our clients and most of our community, when they go through horrible, awful experiences and they make it through, even though a lot of people are not like happy on the other side, just that ability to go through it, I think, is a stepping stone to say, I got through that. Like I remind my kids of things like that too when they're worried about new experiences. I'll be like, it's normal not to feel comfortable. Like you haven't done it yet, but look what you've already gotten through. Like look how far you've come.
Yeah. And you know what you're doing for your kids is exactly that. You're like, it's normal, because sometimes we make it 10 times worse by like telling ourselves how awful it is. And of course, when it's really awful, like, of course we would, it's okay. Like it's awful.
Right.
But just like, it's okay. You can feel awful. You
right.
can do
Like
hard
it
things.
is awful. Like we're acknowledging that it's awful.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just saw a comment going into court this Friday and nervous. Of course. Like court is a terrifying, traumatic experience. And one of the number one things you can do in court, and this is from interviewing people, especially one woman who actually was a translator for 30 years, she said the number one thing you can do is try to calm yourself down. If you can stay calm, if you can even have the pretense of being calm, and we've done a bunch of other interviews on how to do that, so I'm not going to interrupt this one to get into ways how. But if you can just present as calm, you will go so much further in court. Your brain will calm down. You'll be able to remember a lot more if you can be calm. And again, like there's other content, not for now, but being calm is so important.
And Lisa, I'll be really curious to hear your perspective and about this, because one of my other biggest pieces of advice or suggestions would be pausing. So when you're unable to be calm, just be like, let me get back to you. Let me get back to you is my favorite sentence of all time. In like every area of life, we make so many silly mistakes by answering too fast. No?
Totally.
And I don't know if you can, you can speak to doing it in court, but just be like, let me consider it. Can I get back to you? Thank you. Let me get back to you. Yeah. I don't know if that's possible.
Like, okay, so you know that Chris and I, my partner, are a couple, and we usually don't have the opportunity to talk about our relationship because our clients don't want to hear it because they're like, we're in the muck. Like, that's nice, but like, help me now with this Chris stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the things that I take responsibility for in my failed marriage, you know, my relationship of 20 years, was that I never paused. I allowed myself to be led into things without pausing and checking in to ever think, how do I actually feel about this? I never took that time to take a breath and sort of check in with myself. And it seems so ridiculous. Like, who goes through life like that? I think a lot of us do.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Chris. Oh, here we go. All right, that's him. He's the been there, got out too. But after our first date, when we both were like, no, like, it was not love at first sight at all. But after that date, I remember sitting in the car and pausing for the first time ever and being like, how do I feel? Like, how does my body feel? I feel good. Like, that was actually fun. I had a really good time with no pressure. And it was just like that moment. But I cannot believe I've gone through decades of life and never paused to think about it. And I think that pause and checking in with your feelings in general, to be like, am I okay? And what do I need right now, is really, really important. And if I'm not okay, then I'm not okay. And that's okay. But at least I can label it. And just by labeling it, it's helpful to be like, I'm nervous. I don't feel good. But of course I don't feel good. Like what you said, to have compassion for yourself. You're going to court. I'm scared. Like, that's totally normal. You're allowed to feel scared. You're supposed to feel scared. Everybody feels scared.
And know that you don't have to agree to anything that you're not ready to. You don't have to agree to anything that you're not ready to.
In mediation,
and
yes, you don't.
Yeah, and part of it might be like, let me sit with it. I'll get back to you. You go home, you cry, you hit a pillow, you sleep, you talk to your therapist, you talk to a friend, you make a spending plan. Like, you go through a whole process of real evaluation. And you're not highly triggered, you don't feel, and sometimes, you know, so it really is about regulating and managing yourself, and sometimes in the face of other people being dysregulated and other people want to answer now and answer, and you're like, I really want to answer it. So you just keep really quiet and you just say, I want to give you a really thoughtful answer. This is important. I promise I'll get back to you. That's it. You don't have to talk a lot. The shorter you keep it, the better. But just pause. Like, and even if it sounds amazing, know that it goes both ways. Like, sometimes you're like, fine, I just want it to be over with. And sometimes it's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then you go home and you're like, oh, why did I not ask for this, this, and this? So even if it sounds great, just be like, let me get back to you. Just let me get back to you. Favorite sentence ever. And
yeah, that's great. And I've been reading that is like an excellent line in negotiation in general, is let me get back to you, especially if you're unsure. But I also love that you use the example of, even if it sounds amazing, because I'm one of those people that gets like very enthusiastic and excited. I'll be like, there's this offer for this thing, like, let's do it now.
Yeah.
And Chris will be like, hold on. Let's just think about it. He's a little more deliberative, even though in other ways he's very like Tigger popping down the path himself. But it's good to pause. And again, like, I'm so glad that you noted, even when it feels like this is right, but to pause. And it's interesting is, you know, we're working on this online course, and I'm going through the last 3 years of interviews. And I went through one with a friend of ours named Dr. Barb Hewson, who's a mediator. And in it, she talks about the need to pause, and how she says at the end of 2-hour slots, some mediators do 8 hours, which I think is insane. She said, I never like people to make a decision under pressure. So we do 2-hour slots, and I say, go home and think about it, because I can't tell you how many of our clients come to us and say, I was totally coerced into making a decision. My own lawyer was pressuring me. I regret it. I shouldn't have done it. It was awful. And then it's too late.
Yeah.
Or they have to wait like 2 years to go back for a modification.
It's better to slow down when it comes. I mean, these are things that will impact the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same when you get married, and it's the same when you separate. It's really good to take time to figure out some basic things, you know, before you say yes to something that is legally binding for the rest of your life. So even if it pisses everyone off, including yourself, and it's like super uncomfortable, if you're unsure, if there's something in you that is like, and also if you're sure, you're like, yeah, it sounds amazing. Let me sleep on it. I'll get back.
See, I made that mistake because I didn't listen to myself. I didn't pay attention to things that I knew never felt right. And there went 2 decades of my life. And also what you said about pausing before separating, because the time that I discovered some terrible things, I was like, I feel like running away right now. Like immediately, I just want to get out of here, but I can't because there's other people involved. We have 2 children, the house, job, everything else. Oh no. Okay, Raquel, I just got a message that my phone needs to cool down. So just in case it acts weird, that's why.
All right.
So hopefully it'll calm down on its own and we won't get interrupted.
Give your phone some somatic exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's good to know. We'll figure it out if it happens.
Yeah. We'll just restart. Okay. So what else? Keep going.
So the other thing, I mean, I wrote a whole bunch of things here, so I'm gonna like stop me if it gets to be too much. So again, keeping it super simple, neutral, and what you said about listening to your body. That's why I said breathe. Like pay attention to your sensation and breathe, because your body will give you cues. And sometimes we just go into like we stop breathing, we buckle up, we're just like we can be like really tough and just like not. And our bodies will give us signals, and the signals will sometimes just be like, I don't know, I'm confused. And you know what? That's a really clear answer. You don't know. You're confused. You need some time. So the other thing is, so for me, again, everything is about slowing things down and not rushing into a solution. So so that might touch on the tactical empathy. So starting to ask curious questions. You know, when someone suggests something, like trying to imagine what it is for them. You know, just be like, what does it mean to you? What would it look like? Can you tell me more about it? What would it provide for you? Just like not try to find solution, just try to understand. You can even ask each other, like, if you can have it all your way, what would it look like? What would it mean? If I could have it all my way. But sometimes getting to the why, some solutions that did not even appear in the beginning start to emerge. When you like look at the how, it's like you're very stuck. When you look at the why, there's just a lot of other options. And again, like you can go home and suddenly like be like, oh, maybe this is what would solve it. So just starting to get into each other reality, starting to understand what would it mean to you. And it's hard when you feel like this person, you know, has done you wrong. It takes a lot of generosity and a lot of personal management to just be like, okay, what is it that they need? And then I don't have to agree to it. I'm just going to understand, because we tell ourselves a lot of stories, and usually they're like really awful stories. It's that negative bias override. And sometimes when you say, tell me more, you find out something that you didn't even know.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to say something about the art of asking questions. So what I've been, you know, like I said, I've been reading these books on negotiation, and it talks about the power of asking questions, especially when you're dealing with a very difficult adversary, that when you make statements, people can pick apart what you're saying. But when you ask questions, it's an opportunity to educate. It's open. You're saying, what would it look like for you? How can we make this work? If you were me, what would you do in this situation? So there's less ways for the other person to attack when you're asking them. Plus, like we said earlier in this conversation, when you ask someone how they feel or ask them, you know, what's going on with them, it's disarming because, and especially with our clients' exes, when you give them the mic and you let them get out whatever they need to get out, it calms things down. It diffuses the situation.
Yeah. And you know,
Not that it's fair, but it works.
yeah.
It's a tactic that works.
But again, like saying less, you know, like you don't have to say much. You can just say, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't have to agree. If
Right.
you don't say you're right, you just say, I hear you.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right. And that's not giving anything
No,
up.
no. And you also like, so sometimes I put clients on a diet. I call it like an emotional diet, and the basics are like no blaming, no complaining, no defending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you don't start to explain, like, this is what I need. So it's very business-like. You really treat it as a business negotiation, which is hard when it's your life and your kids and your money and like, I mean, all of like a lot of compassion, like all of your survival, fight and flight is like highly, highly activated. So just knowing going to the situation that this is what it is and staying neutral, just like, I hear you. Don't have to defend. If someone is like, you blah, 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 I hear you.
Exactly. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. A lot of times when they start to attack, you don't respond, just I hear you, and then it's can we move back to resolving this issue?
Yeah. And I'm looking at my list here. So yeah, and the no defending and complaining, like when you're arguing about the accuracy or you did this, you did that, you just like get lost. So really, like what to avoid, you know, it's part of it too. Just like this is what we want. How can we do it? What is it that you need? What is it that I need? Let me get back to you. And a lot of things. I'm curious if there's anything you want to add to
Yeah.
this.
I mean, even though, you know, we're going through this list with you guys and saying like, here's some techniques you can use, this is not easy. One thing that works really well is silence. If you ask a question, be silent. Because when we are silent after asking a question, the other person sometimes feels the need to fill the space. And that is an opportunity tactically to get more information to hopefully proceed forward with the negotiation. But the other thing I was going to say is this is not something that happens quickly. This is not something that can be done often in like a 2-hour session. Like sometimes people will come to us and say, I tried mediation, it didn't work. Well, how many times did you go? I went like once or twice and it didn't work. So there's certainly time to stop negotiation. But when you think of it more as a process, it's not like we're going to go in and we're going to get this stuff down. If you go in and say the goal for this one is just to try to disarm the other side, just to say let's show up, let's see if we can get the other side talking, that's progress. And in our world, mediation is a fraction of what it is going to cost once you get going in the court system. Once you start the court system, I say it's like you're turning those financial spigots on and you are lighting your money on fire and you're completely giving your power away to strangers, judges, custody evaluators, AFDs, GALs, whatever, and people constantly complaining about how the system needs to change. And I think one of the ways the system changes is that we learn alternatives to being stuck in the system. And we learn ways to manage conflict independently of the system so we're not just yanked into it. Court should be an absolute like last minute necessity. And I know that like coming from someone who's been to court dozens and dozens of times, that was post judgment, you know, and maybe we should have tried more mediation, but this was already like a little bit this was after our divorce. But mediation is such an opportunity, I feel like, or negotiation. We teach something called strategic communication, which involves a lot of writing and speaking and stuff to establish a record. But there's ways that you can strategically communicate and negotiate with your ex in writing as well. even though I don't think it's as effective as face-to-face negotiation. And also there's ways to do it where you can get a third party besides a hired mediator.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's ways to use like a friend or a family member to be your proxy negotiator.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting because we've dealt with families that come from different cultures where it's not just two people, the couple negotiating, it's the family that has stake in what happens. And sometimes they get involved too. And it's important for other people to realize how to work with difficult opponents.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that, you know, you've shared some ideas that we can put into practice. They're simple strategies. They're not easy. It's very hard to self-regulate.
Yeah.
But that if you could commit to at least trying, just to try,
And
that's huge.
yeah. And I mean that's like slowing down and having space and allowing people, like, just like you need space, allow someone else space. Because I have seen so many times when people need jerk reaction is no, and then they think about it and come back and they're like, actually, but if they're like no and you're like, yeah, you know, I always knew it, and you ask, like, you don't
Right.
give them that space. So allowing things to be unresolved, giving space, especially like think about it as like you're turning a ship that was going in one direction for a long time. It's gonna take a couple of like, it's gonna take a moment for them to catch up that you actually are not there to like get them, you know, that you're there to really figure it out.
Right.
It might take a couple of communication, a couple of attempts. So having a longer view in mind is super, super important. And also when you said that creating trust, so appreciation, you know, when I said look for things to appreciate, and it can be really annoying and counterintuitive.
Yeah,
Because what?
absolutely.
This is basic. They owe it to me. But what you appreciate appreciates. So when you appreciate everything they're doing wrong, you know, and not to like take responsibility for someone else's bad behavior, but it really does. You know, like when you like, that's what you pay attention to, that grows. When you start appreciating the smallest thing, just like it can even be an awful conversation, and at the end you can just say, I really appreciate that you took the time. Can we take a little space and get back to it? I have seen miracles happen.
Me too. Me too. We're with really difficult people.
Yeah, miracles, including unexpected. Like there's something amazing that happened with like, I think we spoke about it. I call it good customer service. Just good customer service. Like talk to them as if you were a clerk in a bank. You never, you never like be inappropriate, you know? So all you need to do is good customer service. I have seen like someone saying, no, no way. And the other person is saying, okay, if anything changes, let me know. And it was awful, and they were shaken, and they're like, oh my God, was I a doormat? And 2 months later, the person come back and like, you know, I thought about it. You can have, like, you don't know. There's something about not fueling the fire. This is where you get to just hold yourself with integrity. And again, it's not about being a doormat. It's not saying yes when you're not ready. It's just giving space and then thanking for the time, even if it, you know, thanking anything you can actually think. So that would be another suggestion that I've just seen work really well.
Yeah. And I know like a lot of people listening to this now and later, they'll be like, I should have a little barf bag to hold up. Like this is counterintuitive. You don't want to do it. Does not have to be genuine, sincere, like, yeah, everything's good between us. It's not. But there's reasons why it's important to try this.
Yeah.
Again, like with what we do, we want our clients to try to save time and money and energy, because your precious energy has been wasted. Your money has been wasted. Your time has been wasted. Like, why not at least consider trying some alternatives? Because often what we've been doing does not work. And we get a lot of clients who've been in the legal system post-judgment for years. And they're like, I have to do what I'm doing is not working. I'm still terrified all the time. I'm not getting anywhere, and we are able to strategize properly, and they make progress, and then they end up being thrilled a lot of the times because they never thought that resolution could be reached. So I think using strategies that and keeping an open mind will produce the possibility of much better results. But you have to look at yourself honestly and think, do I have the capacity to have an open mind?
Yeah.
And maybe change my own behavior and my own, be open to changing your perspective. And if not, then keep doing what you're doing, but nothing's probably going to get better.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit like a parrot. We spoke before and I said it, get support. Like, get support. This is where our brain will just start, like, you know, telling us all kind of strange things, and just having a soundboard, someone that can mirror it back to you, someone that can calm you down, someone that can show you other options, someone that can ask questions that you don't ask yourself. Like, it would make all the difference. And also, just for what you said, like, this is a lot. Like, just pick one. Just pick one.
Yeah, exactly. Try one thing, like shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Let me get back to you. Like,
so Raquel, at the beginning of this, and I've teased you before and said, oh, we're never going to send you any clients, but I think I've changed my perspective because the stuff that you are talking about is actually so similar and so helpful to the stuff that we teach. We do a lot with strategy, but you do a lot with strategy as well, but especially mindset and perspective. And I think that the combination of what you do and what I do could work really well in terms of supporting a client who is about to go into a really tough negotiation. Because again, these social emotional skills and managing conflict are important for everything, not just your ex, if it's a high conflict ex. So Raquel, people can come to you for help with stuff like this, not just to repair their marriages, right? Like, this is your area of expertise.
You're exiting the relationship. I mean, you're setting your life. You want to set it up in the best ways that you can. Not every relationship meant to last. But, especially if you have kids, especially if you have assets together, it's like, of course you want to. And I love what you, and thank you, first of all, for saying that. And I would always adore working with you. I can't wait. But what did I want to say?
You said, I think if you have kids, like, especially if kids.
Especially if you have kids. I don't know. I can't remember what I said. Maybe when
I was thinking what we said at the beginning, especially if you have kids, like if you have a high conflict personality on the other side, which all of our people do, you can't change them, but you can figure out ways to reduce the conflict, because the conflict is what harms the kids. The other person's influence as well, but the conflict really makes things a lot more difficult for the kids who are in the middle. So what you do is, it's almost like, how do I stop the as much of the conflict without changing the other side? Because I can't.
Yeah. I actually remembering what I wanted to say. And you were like, as you were highlighting this so beautifully. So when we started the conversation, you were talking about how this experience can actually grow you into a better version of yourself. So this is where, like, knowing that you can trust yourself, knowing that you can regulate yourself. So the thing about regulating, we are also co-regulating all the time. Like not even when we're negotiating. You know how when you come into contact with someone in a really bad mood, you can get in a really bad mood. And then when you're someone who's just, like, happy, like, you can relax. So by you managing yourself, you're actually influencing your environment. And this is a skill, like, again, as a parent, as a friend, as a, employer, employee, anything, your ability to just stay calm and sane and logical in any situation is such a service. We live in such a world where everybody are so reactive and afraid, and, like, you just look around and just, like, these are skills that will just serve you everywhere. So you're doing it as much for yourself.
Yeah. So with that, Raquel, how can people find you?
So you can DM me. I also give a free consultation, free 1 hour consultation. I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on my website, raquelreiscoaching.com. I think you can see it in my name here.
Yeah,
And
it'll be on our feed. Yeah.
I'd love to hear from anyone. We are herd animals, and like learning how to live with each other it's the foundation of everything in our life: happiness, health, well-being. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you.
I love talking to you, and I love seeing you in real life too.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Raquel. And I'm glad that during this conversation, we figured out some serious overlap, like what we can do, you know, that our clients can sort of, well, my clients in particular can really use you as an amazing resource to learn to self-regulate and also to get them ready for negotiations and mediations and whatever else in their life to reduce conflict.
Yeah. Well, we can talk more.
We will.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
And I'm sending so much love to the person who's going to be in court. And I saw that there were other comments like, you know, bring a friend, pause, don't do it alone.
Yeah. Get support.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.